بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم و به نستعین شاگردان عزیز السلام علیکم و رحمت الله و برکاته. امید دارم حال همه شما خوب باشد. In pursuit of our previous session, today we start from chapter 5. Um, If you can recall, in previous chapter we discussed classification of speech sounds generally based on different parameters. So today we are much more focused on the classification of sounds or speech sounds in English language. So what we did in previous chapter, we were dealing with facts and realities about classification of speech sounds in general. However, in this chapter, we are dealing only with English sound or English sounds. So the content of our today's session basically includes classification of speech sounds on the basis of one, voice or voiceless. And we will make ourselves familiar with the concept of voice or voiceless. Both terminologies, voiced or voiceless, refers to the concept or terminology voicing. So one parameter based on which we are basically classifying or identifying a speech sound is the concept of voicing, whether a sound is voiced or voiceless. So definitely a sound which is voiced is different from the sound which is voiceless. In the second parameter, were criteria based on which we are classifying a speech sound, or basically whether the sounds are oral or nasal. So oral and nasal sounds we already discussed are totally different. If a sound is oral, then that nasal cavity or nasal passage is totally blocked. So the air is coming out through the mouth or oral cavity. But if a sound is nasal, so definitely we are creating an obstruction or blockage somewhere in the oral cavity. So what happens, the air which is coming out through our lungs is coming out through our nose or nostrils. As a result, we are producing nasal sounds. So this is the second criteria. In third, place of articulation. So we may have sounds that they resemble very alike or similar, and even in some cases we think that they are identical. However, it is really very much important if we have got sounds that they are exactly produced from the same place of articulation. So definitely those sounds are identical. I mean, they are referring to the same sound. However, if we have got sounds that they are sharing some properties, but they have two or more than two places of or different places of articulation, then the produced sounds are definitely different sounds. And next, also whether a sound is central or lateral. So if a sound is central, that is totally different from lateral sounds. And moreover, lateral sounds are different from central sounds. So central sounds are produced from the central part of the, for example, our mouth. However, lateral sounds are those sounds that we are creating a kind of blockage or obstruction somewhere in the central, for example, part of our mouth. So the air is coming out from the two sides. And then moreover, we will be talking about manner of articulation. Manner of articulation basically refers to the way we are producing a particular sound. So in this session, basically, we are dealing with the first three parameters based on which we are classifying a speech sounds, whether a sound is voiced or voiceless, and then a sound is oral or nasal, and then place of articulation. But before going to discuss these three parameters, it is also important to actually pay attention to the air-stream mechanism, because we already discussed that air-stream mechanism is very important because it creates or it paves the ground for movement of air. If air is not moving from one position to another position, in other words, if we are not able to create basically air pressure difference, then we will not be able to actually produce a speech sound. So we are creating basically air pressure difference. Then as a result we are creating, for example, sound wave, and then as a result the sound is perceived by listeners, and then it goes to their maybe their inner ears, and then that is translated and something like that. So we are basically today dealing with the first three, as well as to these first three categories. The first one, which is voiced or voiceless, and second, oral or nasal, place of articulation. So before sticking to these points where these two parameters, we will be discussing the concept of air stream as well. But um, with a special reference to English sounds. So let's have a flashback. Let's actually look back. Classification of speech sounds. We already discussed for description of consonants, there are normally the following set of properties. We already discussed. For example, aorist mechanism. So we discussed that we had three types of aorist mechanisms. So the first one was pulmonic, and then we had velaric, and then we also had glottalic. So three types. And moreover, we talked about the initiators. And next, vowel and consonant. So these are also we discussed, right? We looked at vowel and consonant from two different perspectives, from the viewpoint of function and from the viewpoint of physical properties. So probably you remember. If you do not remember, just go back, have a look, or just get back to what we discussed in previous sessions, and even you can refer to your chapter. And then we also categorize the speech sounds whether sounds are obstruent or sonorant. Also, it was quite a kind of physical property based on which we classified speech sounds. And then in terms of structure, also we divided all speech sounds into, for example, again, like we discussed obstruent and sonorant, that is also based on structure. So then we had different types of structure. We had open approximation, close approximation, and we had, for example, plosive. In many types of structure we had. So we already classified the speech sounds. And then we also talked about vocoid and contoid, so about the function, about the physical property and everything. So it was kind of a list of those things that we have already covered so far. So in case you have doubt about any of, for example, these concepts, so simply get back to these idea. So probably you have the video and even you can refer to your chapters. So now we start with description of consonants. With the description of consonant sounds, we already said that consonant sounds can be described on the basis of different parameters or based on different, for example, criteria. The first one is aorist mechanism. If one consonant is actually produced by employing or using, for example, pulmonic aorist mechanism, that consonant is really different from another consonant which is using or, for example, employing or applying glottalic aorist mechanism. Yes, because the way that they are using that aorist mechanism, so they are different. Because one is using pulmonic aorist mechanism, so another one is glottalic. Okay, so it means that for one consonant, the initiator is the larynx or the larynx, but for another one, the initiator is, for example, the glottis, or it could be, for example, the tongue. So now the type of aorist used, for example, by different types of sounds, if they are using different types of aorist mechanism, then we are definitely producing different types of sounds. And next, voice. We already talked about the concept of voice or voicing. So if a sound is voiced and if another sound is voiceless, then we have got two different sounds. Even if they seem, for example, alike or identical, but because one is voiced, another one is voiceless, then we have got two different sounds. And then oral, but later on we will be talking about what kind of sounds can be called voiced and what sounds, for example, are called voiceless. And next, oral and nasal. So we already talked what sounds are oral and what sounds are nasal. And then place of articulation. So we will be talking about the place of articulation from which this is. So basically place of articulation, I have already given you a definition where the two articulators, passive and passive and active articulators, are meeting or attaching each other. That exact point is called place of articulation. Suppose that in the production of a particular sound, like for example th, the tip of your tongue is moving in touching the upper front teeth. Then where the tip of the tongue and the upper front teeth are basically touching each other or meeting each other, that place is called place of articulation. And that manner of articulation, how, for example, a particular sound is produced, whether that is plosive, that is fricative, or how. So we will not be actually touching upon manner of articulation in this session, but we will cover it in maybe next session. So vowel classification involves somewhat different features. Yes, we will be talking about how we are classifying, for example, vowel sounds. So they are also called like speech sounds. But however, the way we are classifying vowels, they are absolutely different from the ways through which we are classifying speech sound in with the special focus to consonants. Okay, then again, we will be focusing on ear mechanism in this session, and then the concept of voice, whether a sound is oral or nasal, and then also place of articulation. So manner of articulation and vowel classification. So we will be focusing on them maybe in future sessions. So let's have a look at the anatomy of the consonants. Right. I mean, this is a kind of repetition. If we look at the anatomy of the consonants, when we are producing consonants, or generally when we are producing sound, what happens? Specifically for English, English is a pulmonic, or English is a kind of language that its phonetics, I mean, its sounds are basically employing or using pulmonic aerostem mechanism. It means that the initiators are, or the initiator is basically the lungs. So it is lungs that creating air pressure somewhere and then pushing the air is coming out, and then we are modifying the air somewhere in our mouth or somewhere in our vocal cord. As a result, we are producing a particular sound. So generally, we can say that there is kind of agreed mechanism through which phonologists and even phonoticians are explaining or describing consonants. So now we're going through each one. So the first one is ear mechanism. This is one of parameters, one of the properties through which we are classifying a speech sound. Now, if we have a look at air mechanism, we already discussed, as I have already told you, this is a kind of repetition. Then we can say, is speech is audible because the movement of air? Right. I already told you it is very important. But how? Movement of air is important. It means that we have to create air pressure difference, then this difference creates movement of air. Air actually travels from one point to another point. Now, the first important thing for the production of a speech sound, in order to make it audible, movement of air is something crucial, is something necessary. So this is the first thing. It means that air travels or air moves through our lungs and then coming to somewhere. So next, what happens? Air movement causes vibration, exactly. So the air which is coming out from our lungs and the air is meeting basically our vocal folds somewhere. Now, vocal fold is somewhere actually at the very end part or portion of our windpipe or trachea. It means that we have got a windpipe which is connecting our lungs and also our larynx, or simply we can say our vocal folds. Now the air which is actually produced or as a result of creation of air pressure in the lungs, so the air is traveling, means is coming out, and it is meeting our vocal folds somewhere and it is blowing these vocal folds. So as a result, it creates vibration. Now this vibration basically leads to creation of waves or sound waves. So as a result, sound is produced. So this sound is perceived by the listener or audience, and then it goes into, for example, inner ear, and then that is translated, where that is like understood there, so by the brain. So here the author says, since sound waves need air, right? If we would like to create sound waves, so we need air. Suppose that if the air is not coming out from our lungs, and if the air is not actually blowing the vocal folds, so how can we produce vibration? There is no vibration. When there is no vibration, there is no sound wave. There is no sound wave, there is no sound audible. So the main thing that actually is needed for the production of a speech sounds, and in order to make for example, a speech sound audible, so movement of air is really needed, and the existence or presence of air is really needed. So air is an essential part of, for example, production of speech sound in order to make it audible. Then air streams, as mentioned, can be set in motion or initiated in three ways. We have already discussed, we have got three initiators. So what it means that air pressure or air movement can be created by three organs. So the first one is basically the lungs, and the second one is basically the glottis, and the third one is the tongue itself. So we already discussed these things in details in previous session. I think we do not need actually to, for example, go over to those realities that we discussed in previous sessions. And Now, coming to English sounds particularly, all English sounds, as I have already told you, all English sounds are using pulmonic aerostem mechanism. So both consonants and vowels. So what it means that when we are producing English sounds, we are using our lungs, and lungs are used basically to create air pressure, and then the air is coming out. So it means that if we look at the direction of the direction of the air is not inward when we are producing a speech sound. Rather, we are breathing in and we actually trap or block the air somewhere in our, for example, lungs, and then as a result, we are gradually releasing the air. Air is coming out, and then when air is coming out, as a result, we are producing a speech sound. Now, the direction of the air is basically outward. It means that this is aggressive, or another terminology for that we can say is regressive. It is not ingressive. It means that air is not going inside when we are producing speech sounds, specifically English speech sounds. So now, to be more specific, the initiator is the lungs, exactly. It is the lungs that produce basically that air pressure difference. And then the rest of respiratory system, it means that the air, once it is started by creation of air pressure somewhere in our lungs, so as a result, the air is coming out, and that air is manipulated or changed somewhere in a perfect way or in a particular way to produce the intended sound which is required in English. And then again, so we have got 3 points. The initiator is the lungs, so it means that all sounds that we are producing in English are pulmonic. Second, the direction of the airflow is outward, means that that is aggressive. And then pulmonic aerostream is overwhelmingly the most common aerostream mechanism in the world of the language. So what it means, most of the languages in the world are using pulmonic aerostream rather than glottalic or valeric. So that is what the according to typological study or according to statistics, so it has already been found that most of languages in the world are using pulmonic aerostream mechanisms. So, and moreover, what the author is trying to underline or is trying to highlight is um, glottalic and valeric sounds when we are producing or when we are using, for example, aerostem mechanism related to glottalic or valeric. So it means that the speaker doesn't have very much control over that. It's really difficult. However, when we are producing, for example, or we are using aerostem mechanism, which is pulmonic, it means that we have more control over how we're producing, where to block the air, and how to modify the air somewhere. So for that, most of the languages in the world are using pulmonic system. And moreover, for us, we people, because we are also using in Persian and Pashto that pulmonic aerostrom mechanism, it is really very difficult for us to produce like glottalic and valeric sounds. So it means that if we look at the three, for example, mechanism, then pulmonic aerostrom mechanism is much more controllable. So I mean that the controllability of pulmonic aerostem mechanism is much more than the controllabilities of glottalic and valeric aerostem mechanisms. So the first parameter based on which we were classifying specifically English sound was aerostem mechanism, but because we, for all English sounds, we have a single aerostem mechanism which is called pulmonic, and moreover in terms of direction that is regressive or aggressive. Now after this time, even if we are describing consonants, we will never call, or we will never even name that pulmonic aerostem mechanism, because all English sounds are using pulmonic aerostrom mechanism. In terms of direction, all are regressive. Then we leave that. So now we are coming to number 2, which is voice or voicing. Now, a major division among the speech sounds which is relevant for all languages is the dichotomy of voiced and voiceless. Right. So the concept of voicing is, even in English, if I'm saying that pa and ba, both are identical sounds. So that is a claim, that is a releasing allegation. Now, in order to show you so how they are different, I'm saying that yes, in terms of voice, they are different, because pa is voiceless and ba is voiced. Now, how can we determine? So, for the time being, just place your fingers on your throat and pronounce the sound pa. When you're pronouncing the sound pa, you feel less vibration in your vocal fold, or basically means in your throat. So it means that there is less amount or less rate of vibration in your vocal fold. Now, any sound produced in that way, which is produced as a result of less vibration in the vocal fold, that is voiceless. But when you're producing b, b, so what happens? You definitely feel much more vibration in your vocal fold. So any sound during the production of which you produce a lot of vibration, or a lot of vibration is produced, then that particular sound is voiced. Now, pa and ba are two different sounds. Though they have the same place of articulation and the same manner of articulation, however, in terms of voicing, they are absolutely different. For example, pa is voiced and ba is, pa is voiceless and ba is voiced. So this is the concept of voicing. The concept of voicing after this time, if we are asking, you are expected to tell us or say that the concept of voicing refers to the amount of vibration when we are producing a particular sound. If during the production of a particular sound we produce more vibration, that is voiced. If we produce less vibration, then that particular sound is voiceless. So this is the second parameter based on which we are categorizing speech sounds, specifically English speech sounds. So here, voiced, vibration in the vocal folds, and voiceless, no vibration in the vocal folds. So, but I mean, this is not very rational to say no vibration, but it has turned out in books and they are saying no vibration. So definitely there should be some vibration. If there is no vibration, then how can we produce speech sounds? We say that there is vibration, but if we are basically comparing the level of vibrations, the levels of vibration, so one level or the amount of vibration involved in the production of one sound is different from the production of another sound. So that is why I'm saying that we are not claiming that while we are producing pa, there is no vibration in the vocal folds. There is, but the amount of vibration is less compared to the amount of vibration produced during the production of the sound ba. So that is the idea. We will never say no vibration, rather we say less vibration. For example, if we are saying pronouncing z, z, and then s, z, right now put your fingers on your throat. When you are pronouncing that prolonged z, you feel a very strong vibration in your throat, or technically in your vocal folds, right? But when you're saying s, so in that case you feel less vibration, but still there is some vibration. Again, I'm repeating what I have already told you. When you're producing sa, it doesn't mean that there is no vibration at all in your vocal folds. So if there is no vibration at all, how we're producing that particular sound? So the sound will not be audible. So that is the idea, that we are comparing the level of vibration produced during the production of the two categories of sounds. And a second way, in case that you cannot perceive the different levels of vibration in your vocal folds, just put your fingers on your ears and say zzz, zzz, and then again you need to actually articulate or pronounce s, s. So when you're saying za, there is a vibration starting from your vocal folds somewhere in your throat, and that movement is actually coming to somewhere close to your ears, so you feel that. However, when you're producing sa, so there is not such vibration. So maybe vibration is there, but the level of vibration is really low. Then we already discussed pulmonic aggressive air flux, which is a kind of mechanism used in the production of English sounds. So what happens in terms of its anatomy? So the air basically flus. It means the air travels. The air comes through what? Through trachea. Trachea means that windpipe. That windpipe which is connecting your vocal folds to your lungs. and then the air is coming into your larynx. Larynx is a kind of mobile box which is moving up and down. That is called larynx. Inside that larynx, there is actually what we call vocal folds. So here we have got some cords when the air is coming out. So the air is basically ballooning, right? So ballooning means that it is actually moving or shaking those cords. As a result, we are producing sound waves. So, as I have already told you, larynx is like a mobile box suspended at the top of the trachea, acting to control the airway to and from the lungs, right? So basically, it is used to control the airway. Sometimes it is blocking the air, sometimes it is releasing the air. So it acts or functions that way. And then, if we consider from the larynx, so also specifically from front to back are the vocal folds. So, as I have already told you, within that larynx, which is functioning or which actually resemble like a box, within that box we have got vocal folds. Yani pardahai sauti or vocal cords. So we have got vocal folds, and then within that vocal folds we have vocal cords. Cords means rishtaha. So as a result, air is coming out, the air is ballooning vocal cords. As a result, wave sounds are produced, and then sounds or speech sounds became basically audible or perceivable. So again, here we already talked about voicing, but we haven't seen the anatomy of voicing. So right now I would like to show you the anatomy of, for example, voicing. See, this is, if you see my cursor, this is right. This is basically inside that Adam's apple, or we can call it larynx, right? So basically, this is inside our larynx, and these are basically vocal folds or vocal cords. Pardahai sautis. These two are basically called vocal folds, but these are basically vocal cords. يعني رشتهاي صوتي. So what happens? This is actually connected to that trachea or windpipe. Windpipe is connected to this, and the air is coming out through this. So now this is open, right? So what we can say that our vocal cords can have two status. It could be open, something like this. This is open, right? So you see this area, this is open. However, this one is the second status, which is closed. This is closed. So what happens? For the first case, for this one, which is open, the air is coming out. This is already open. I mean, there is not any closure in the airflow. The air is coming out. So maybe the air is just touching these vocal cords. So basically here, creating less vibration. Right. So because already the airway is open. When the airway is open, then the air is not actually making contact with these sides, right, with these two sides. So as a result, we perceive less vibration. Now, any sound which is produced in a way during the production of which the vocal cords are open, so the sound which is produced is voiceless. Because why it is voiceless? Because during the production we do not produce much more vibration. However, in the second case, the second status, if we consider, see, the vocal cords are closed. So what it means, if the air is coming out from the lungs, the air needs actually to push these two, for example, edges apart. So when the air is pushing, so in fact, we create much more vibration, for example, in these areas, in the vocal folds, right? So here, so these vocal cords are actually shaking, or in professional, for example, terminology, we can say they are basically vibrating. So as a result, while we are producing sounds that they are produced in the second case or in the second manner, that particular sound is called voiced. Why? Because during the production of which that ballooning of air creates lots of vibration. So this is the anatomy of voicing, right? So if we look at, for example, vocal folds or vocal cords, if it is open, we produce voiceless sound, and if it is closed or blocked, so we are producing voiced sounds. So that is what I have already given you the explanation. Sounds can be voiced in any position in the word, right? The author says yes, we can produce sounds, or basically, let's propound it another way. A sound can be voiced. It means that a sound can make vibration or more vibration in any position, initial, middle, and final position. However, it is very common to actually have a voice sound specifically when it is located between two or more than two other voice sounds. For example, if you consider bit, this da is, while we are producing this da, so this da creates lots of vibration. Why? Because it is located between two other voice sounds. Right. What are the two, for example, voice sounds? The first one itself, this is vowel. Vowel are always voiced. It means when we are producing vowel sounds, so we need to actually produce a lot of vibration. And second, da. Da itself is also a voiced sound. So this da, which is located between one vowel and another consonant which is voiced, so this one creates or produces a lot of vibration when we are producing bidding. And second, for example, here we have got a sneezing, za, between two vowels, right? Because I have already told you vowels are voiced. Then za between two other vowels itself, which is a voice sound, then it creates much more vibration. And then feeder again, feeder, if you consider this one, this da also is located between two vowels. Vowels are voiced, then da creates much more vibration. So when there is an adjacent voiceless sounds or pause, voicing will not last for so long or be so strong. Yes, what happens? This is, for example, a sneeze, sneeze, and this one is feed, and this one is bit. So here we have got za, right? Za, though it is voiced, but because we do not have any other voiced sound after this, so voicing doesn't continue for a long time. Fit, again, it has ended into da, which is a voiced sound, but because after da we do not have any other voiced sound, then the voicing, or technically that vibration, doesn't continue for a long time. And then again, the word bait also, if you consider, so the same thing happens here, right? So after da we do not have any particular sounds, specifically voice sound. Now when we are producing bit, so this da sound doesn't create much more vibration, and moreover that vibration doesn't continue for a long time. So now can you recall the following? So these were the concepts that we discussed, right? So what is voice? Voiced versus voiceless? Basically, what is the concept of voice? You have to be able to recall. And how voice sounds are different from voiceless sounds. What are the two common stages of glottis or vocal folds? So we say two, right? Depending upon the types or status of the, for example, glottis, we were classifying speech sounds into voice and voiceless. And then we have got here drawn apart versus drawn together. So we are moving on to the next step. So the third parameter based on which we are classifying English sounds is basically whether sounds are oral or nasal. So definitely we already discussed an oral sound is a sound when we're producing it that nasal canal, or we can say the nasal passage is blocked. The air is coming out through our mouth. So any sound produced in that way during the production of which that nasal cavity, or we can say that nasal passage is blocked, the air is coming out through our mouth, those sounds are oral. However, nasal sounds are those sounds when we are producing them, then the oral cavity or oral passage is blocked. It means the air is not coming out through our mouth. So what happens if this airway is blocked, then the air is coming out through our nostrils. So any sound produced in the manner in which the air is coming out through our nostrils and simultaneously that oral cavity is blocked, we call them nasal sounds. So now here the same is actually explained here when we are saying oral sound, soft palate is raised. So what happens when soft palate is raised? Soft palate is basically blocking that nasal passage. So the air has to come out through our mouth. That particular sound which is produced is oral. Now nasal is quite vice versa. The soft palate is lower. It means that the soft palate is actually blocking that the passage which is coming to our mouth. So as a result, the air is coming out through our nostrils. Then that particular sound which is produced is nasal sounds. Now in English, there are three nasal sounds: ma, na, ung. This ung is basically a combination of ng or sometimes nk. If we consider, for example, in ram, ma itself is actually a nasal sound. It means when we are producing ma, so the air is blocked. The airway is blocked somewhere in our oral cavity, and the air is coming out through our nostrils. Then ma is a nasal sound. And moreover, ran, na. When we're producing na, again the air is coming out through our nostrils somehow. And then rang, n plus g, is produced in a way that the air is also coming out through our nostrils. So let's have a look at the anatomy of oral and nasal sounds. Look. So if you see my cursor, this is called what? You see here, this is written velum or soft palate. See, this is soft palate, right? And moreover, if you see here, if you follow my cursor, please follow. So this is actually a buccal cavity, or we can say oral cavity, or simply we can say mouth. This is mouth, right? This is a kind of cavity, or this is a kind of passage through which the air is coming out through this way, right? So coming out this way. And again, we have got another passage as well here, which is called nasal cavity. See, this part is all cavity, which is called nasal cavity. It means that here we have got some space or gap, which is leading to our nose, or we can say nostrils. Now, this velum or soft palate that we have here, right, this one, it can have two positions. So it may go up, right? If it goes up, what happens? It blocks, for example, this passage, right? If this passage is blocked, then the air is coming out through our mouth, right? So the sound which is produced somewhere in our oral cavity or in our mouth. So this is oral sound. But however, if it is something vice versa, it means that if it is something opposite, if that velum or soft palate is lowered, is coming down here, what happens? It blocks this area, right? So here we have got another passage. It blocks this area. Then the air which is coming out from our lungs, it has to move or has to travel or has to flow through this nostril, right? So through nostril, as a result, the air is coming out this way, right? So as a result, we are producing nasal sounds. Now again, as for example, a breather, we can say if the air is coming out through our nasal cavity, sounds produced in that way are called nasal. However, if the air is coming out through our oral cavity, those sounds are called oral sounds. So now, question, oral versus nasal. You should be able to actually distinguish. So basically, whether a sound is oral or nasal depends upon the status of, or specifically the status or the location of the soft palate, whether the soft palate is low or high. Depending upon that, we can say that we are producing oral or nasal sounds. And next one is the place of articulation. What is the place of articulation? I have already discussed the place of articulation, and I said that when we are producing a speech sounds, there are two types of articulators. Active articulators, those articulators that they are moving or they are able to move, they are dynamic. Passive articulators, those articulators that they cannot move. You know, if you are asking me, so what articulators are passive and active, I would say, for example, the lower lip. Generally the lower jaw that is moving, right? The lower lip and moreover the tongue is moving, right? But the upper jaw is not moving, right? The upper front teeth and even our palate, soft palate, they are not moving. So what happens when we are producing a speech sound, then we are moving our tongue, we are moving our lower lip. So these are active articulators. Now, place of articulation is what? Place of articulation is basically referring to the concept where active articulators are moving towards passive articulators and where they meet each other. So that particular point that they are meeting each other at is called place of articulation. So that is the concept of place of articulation. So in English, moreover, what the author says that if we would like to name, for example, a particular sound or give the property of place of articulation to a particular sound, now we are, for example, assigning or attributing that property of a particular sound on the basis of the property of passive articulator. What it means, if the tongue which is dynamic, which is moving, right, if part of the tongue is touching, maybe it touches the upper front teeth, so we can call it that is a kind of dental sound because our tongue is touching our upper front teeth. It could be, for example, velar if the back part of our tongue is actually touching the region just before, for example, that soft palate. Sorry, velum. We call it velum. So generally, we are not giving the property of the place where the active articulators are meeting. Rather, we are giving the property of passive articulator as the property of place of articulation to particular sounds. So now let's have a look at the anatomy of passive and active articulators in generally all places of articulation. In English, we have generally 8 places of articulation. Let's have a look at the picture that I have provided for you. So look, this is the anatomy of place of articulation. See, what sounds are dental? Dental sounds are those sounds that the lower, it could be the lower lip or it could be, for example, the tongue, whichever, right, is touching the front or the upper front teeth. For example, we say fa. What happens? Sorry, not fa. Fa is, yes, fa. The lower lip, which is actually active articulator, is moving the or moving toward the, for example, upper front teeth. Now, this is called dental, right? We do not call it labial because the property of passive articulators are given to particular sounds. And moreover here, we have got basically labiodental, which is the next one, right? Labiodental. So this is the lower lip. Lower lip is moving up, so it means that this is active. However, the upper teeth is not moving, right? Now, this is called labiodental, so the property of dental is given to that particular sound. But in some cases, a combination of two is also given. But generally, the property of passive articulator is given to a particular sound in order to identify the exact place of articulation of that particular sound. So again, here we have got bilabial, means that two lips are actually touching each other, right? So this is a kind of labial sound. So this is one place of articulation, which is dental. Second place of articulation is labiodental, means that both the lower lip and the upper, for example, front teeth are touching each other. And next one we have bilabial, means two lips are touching each other. And the fourth one is alveolar. Alveolar is somewhere, suppose that this part is your upper front teeth. Now the region just behind your upper front teeth is called alveolar. Like when we are producing ta in English, ta, da. These are all alveolar sounds. So alveolar sounds are those sounds that you are actually moving the tip of your tongue up, and that tip of your tongue is touching this region, which is behind your upper front teeth. As a result, you are producing alveolar sounds. Next, we have got post-alveolar sounds. Post-alveolar, that is clear. Post means that just across from alveolar. Right, and if alveolar region is here, then post-alveolar means behind alveolar region. So this part is called a post-alveolar region. We also have some sounds like, for example, cha and ja. They are post-alveolar sounds in English. And then we have palatal sounds like, for example, ya, ya, y that we have in English. That is palatal sound. So this is the next place of articulation, and this one is velar. Velar is this part. Velar, another name for velar is velum, which is called like soft palate, right? So any sound which is produced from this position is called velar, like k, g. They are velar sounds. And down here we have got glottal sounds. So any sound which is produced from here, this is very close to our vocal folds, right? So they are called glottal sounds, like ha, ha, like hello. Ha is a kind of glottal sounds. Now, totally, how many places of articulation do we have in English? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that was the idea. So now, let's have a look at all vocal organs. Right, all articulators, including vowels. Now, leave, for example, these that we already discussed here. Here what we have done, we have divided the tongue into its parts. Specifically, this is very useful. I mean, division of the tongue itself is very necessary while we are discussing and describing vowels. So this is the tongue. The very front part of the tongue is called tip of the tongue. So when I am saying tip of the tongue means this part, if you see my cursor. However, when I am saying blade of the tongue, blade is just behind the very front part. This is actually tip, but this part is basically blade. However, after the blade or post blade, if you consider, here is the front part of the tongue, right? And here is basically the back part of the tongue. But sometimes even we may have root of the tongue somewhere here, right? Which is very close to epiglottis. And moreover, we already said, for example, here we have got teeth, the upper front teeth and lower front teeth. They are also functioning as places of articulation, as we already, for example, saw them. And then we have alveolar ridge. Alveolar ridge is also called alveolum, this part, right? And then here we have got, we already actually had, so because this is a general picture, specifically in English, we say that we had post-alveolar sounds somewhere here, like cha and ja. And then we have some hard palate sounds, sounds produced from our hard palate and sounds produced from our velum or velar region. So here, and then uvula. So this is not actually present in English, but in some language like qa and gha, which is very common in Persian, Pashto, and Arabic. So we may have that one. And then epiglottis, so in some cases we may have sounds, but in English we don't have such sounds. And here we have got vocal cords. See, these are vocal cords. We already saw it in the anatomy of vocal cords. And then this is larynx. This part is kind of box within which we have got vocal cords. And then windpipe is here, which is connecting, for example, that box to our lungs. And then this is esophagus, through which we are like just eating, right? Is connecting to what is leading to our stomach. And then this part is gluteus itself. So these are the entire vocal organs. So maybe all of them are not present in English, but generally we have such in here. Even nasal cavity we have, right? And then we have oral cavity here. So what are bilabial sounds? It is clear, bi means two, labial means any sounds produced by two lips. So how many sounds that we have are produced by two lips? So this is very common. So the active articulator is the lower lip and the passive articulator should be the upper lip. Now pa, when we are producing pa, so we are producing pa means that we are making a bilabial sound, a sound which is produced by two lips in terms of place of articulation, right? And moreover, when we're describing speech sounds, there are three terminologies. We have to describe that sounds in terms of voice. We have to describe that particular sound in terms of place of articulation. When we say bilabial means that the two lips are meeting each other. And then plosive means manner of articulation, how it is produced. Now when we are saying pa, pa is voiceless. Because if you put your fingers on your throat or if you are putting your fingers on your ears, so during the production of the sound pa, you feel less vibration. Then this is voiceless. So it means that if we look at the status of the glottis or we can say vocal folds, so that is wide open. The air is coming out. There is not any blockage in the airway. So as a result, we are producing a voiceless sound. Then bilabial, pa is bilabial. Why? Because the lower lip, which is active, is touching the upper teeth. Sorry, the upper lip. So both are actually involved. Both lips are involved in the production of pa As a result, we are producing a bilabial sound. Plosive, it means that we basically create a complete blockage. Then we are forcing the air. Air is coming out in a plosive manner. And this is ba. The only difference between pa and ba is this, that ba is voiced. Means that when we are producing ba, we feel more vibration in our vocal folds. Then again, this is bilabial, plosive. See, there is not any difference in terms of place of articulation. Both are bilabial. Both are plosive. But the only difference is voicing. So ba and pa are different in terms of voicing. So the third bilabial sound is ma. So this is voiced, means that when we're producing ma, there is more vibration in the vocal folds. And then again, this is bilabial, means that when we are producing ma, we are pressing the two lips against each other. But this is not plosive or whatever, this is nasal. When we are producing ma, the manner in which ma is produced, the air is coming out through our nose. So that nasality, or the concept of coming air through the nose, refers to the idea of nasal sounds. And then the fourth one, in some cases, wa. Wa is also a kind of bilabial sound, right? But wa, which is a semi-vowel, is voiced labial velar. Means that, okay, when we are producing wa, we feel more vibration on our vocal folds, and moreover, this is labial. So labial means that the two lips come close, but they're not touching. Velar, so it means that the back part of our tongue is also, to some extent, is involved in the production of this sound. When we say wa, wa, this is approximate, means that the active and passive articulators come close. They are approximate. They are approximate, or maybe they are coming close to each other, right? Or approximate. So, but they are not creating any abstraction. So as a result, there is enough, for example, we can say gap, or for example, hole there that through which, or passage through which the air is coming out. So generally we have got four bilabial sounds in English, but the fifth one is this one, which is voiced wa. In English we do not have this one. Maybe in some varieties of English, so we may have a kind of voiceless wa. So that wa that we are producing is voiced. That wa that we know in English, that is voiced. Maybe in some varieties. This is not very common in Aber English. Then labiodental, that is already clear from the title. So you are producing such a sound, or such sounds in which the lip, specifically the lower lip and the upper teeth, are basically involved. So for labiodental sounds, so what happens, the active articulator, which is the lower lip, is touching the upper front teeth. For example, we say fa. When we say fa, we are pressing the lower lip against the upper teeth. Right, so fa is a kind of voiceless labiodental fricative. So what it means is voiceless because we produce fa. When we are producing fa, there is less amount of vibration in our vocal fold. Labiodental means that both the lower lip and the upper front teeth are involved in the production of the sound fa. And this is fricative. It means the manner in which fa is produced is actually creating a kind of blockage and then releasing the air slowly. That is fricative. We already discussed that one. Fa and va, they are not very much different. The only difference is here that fa is voiceless and va is voiced. So you can try it even right now. Put your fingers on your throats and just try what is the difference between voiceless and voiced. And moreover, what is the difference between fa and va? You will perceive the level of vibration in the two sounds. So next one we have dental sounds. It means that those sounds that they are produced basically by the tip of the tongue and the upper front teeth. So in English we have got two sounds which are dental. The first one is fa, fa, as in thigh, voiceless dental fricative. See, tha is basically spelled with th. Th, like I would like to thank you all people for listening to me. So this symbol stands for th, which is standing for tha. Tha as in thigh. This is voiceless, means that we produce less vibration when we are producing, for example, we're articulating the sound tha. And then that is dental, means that the upper front teeth are basically involved in the production of this sound. And that is fricative, means that we create a blockage of the air. The air is released slowly. But this one is not very much different. Again, that is spelled with the same th, but this one is pronounced the. The first one is pronounced th. This one is pronounced the. Th, the. Th, the. So as in the voiced dental fricative. This is voiced in terms of, for example, the amount of vibration. The two sounds are different. Otherwise, there is not any difference between the two. Both actually share common place of articulation and common manner of articulation. So this is what the tongue is conventionally divided into the tip. I have already explained. Tip of the tongue, the very front part, and blade of the tongue just behind the tip, and also we had front part, and then we had that back part, and then we had root part or root of the tongue. I have already discussed. So next place of articulation, which is alveolar. Alveolar is that region you have already seen in the picture that is just located, or is the region right behind the upper front teeth. Right. So that area is called alveolar. So what happens when we are producing alveolar sounds? The front part of the tongue, I mean the tip of our tongue, or sometimes the blade of our tongue, is touching that region. So specifically in English, ta is basically an alveolar sound, because when we are producing ta, so the tip of the tongue is touching somewhere, not really the tip, but the blade of the tongue, right? The blade of the tongue is touching the alveolum region, or alveolar region, or the alveolum. So ta as in type, this is voiceless, means that when you are producing ta, there is less amount of vibration in the vocal folds. Alveolar because your tongue is touching that alveolum region, or alveolar region, right? And then we have got plosive, means that we create a complete blockage, then the air is coming out in a plosive manner. Da, the only difference between ta and da is this, that ta is basically voiced, means that we create more vibration, or we perceive more vibration when we are producing ta. There is not any other difference between the two. And then moreover, we have got na. Again, you do perceive that when we are producing na, the blade of your tongue is touching, specifically that very front part of your tongue is touching that alveolar region. So this is also voiced, means that when we are producing na, we perceive more vibration. This is alveolar because the tongue is touching that alveolar region, and then that is nasal because the air is coming out through our nostrils. And then again, we have got sa as in sip, right? Sip is also voiceless alveolar fricative. So voiceless means less amount of vibration is actually perceived. Alveolar again means that this is produced from alveolum region, and then fricative means that the sound is produced in a way that we block the airflow, and then as a result, air is released and air is coming out very slowly. Za is also. So za is a counterpart of sa. The only difference between za and sa is this, that za is voiced and sa is voiceless. See, here we have got voiceless, but here we have got voiced. Both are alveolar fricative sounds. And next one is ra, as in rep. This is also actually voiced. This is also alveolar. Voiced means that when we are producing ra, we perceive more vibration, and this is alveolar because it is produced from that particular region that we call it alveolum. And then central approximant, yes, this is not lateral, so the air is coming out from our, for example, central part of our mouth, so that is called central approximant, which is manner of articulation. So next one also we have la. So la is also voiced, is also an alveolar sound, but the only difference is la is not central sounds, right? La is lateral. We already discussed it. And then this is another ra, which is flap, or we can say, sorry, retroflex, which is very common in Pashto. We say a ra, ra, ra. So this is the voiced retroflex. Maybe in English is not present, but in some languages that is present. This is retroflex. Retroflex is somewhere located just very close to alveolar region, but is just kind of post-alveolar region, right? Is very close to that. We say a ra, but if we just push the tip of our tongue a little bit back, then we are producing ra. So we do not have retroflex ra in English. Now we have got post-alveolar. So we had a region for alveolar. Now if you move a little bit backward, right, towards our hard palate, we get post-alveolar region. In English, we have only two post-alveolar sounds. The first one is sha. So this symbol basically stands for sha. Sha as in ship. This is voiceless, means that when we are producing this sound, we perceive less vibration, and then in terms of place of articulation, this is post-alveolar. In terms of manner of articulation, this is fricative, means that we release the air very slowly. We say sha, something like this. And then the next sound is ja, sorry, ja. This is ja as in bij. So this is also a counterpart of sha. The only difference between sha and ja is this, that ja is whist, means that we feel more vibration in our vocal folds. Then this is also post-alveolar and also fricative. So this is actually cha as in chunk. So this is much more palatalized, but you do remember that I said that we have two post-alveolar sounds, right? Which is sha and ja. Cha. See, cha is somehow a little bit towards the back part of our tongue. But according to this author, we have got four sounds. But exactly the place of articulation for sha, cha, ja, and cha are a little bit different. But like generally, let's assume that we have got four. But exactly when we are saying sha is post-alveolar, but when we are saying cha, it is far more backward somewhere. Okay, cha, this stands for ch, or wherever you're producing the sound cha, right? Chunk. Cha as in chunk. This is whistless, post-alveolar, affricate sounds. So affricate sounds, we have already discussed that it actually starts with complete obstruction and ends with slow release. So it partially carries the property of, for example, plosive, and also the property of fricative sounds between the two. And then after sha, we have got ja. This is ja. Ja as in junk. So this is also voiced post-alveolar affricate sounds. Now we have got palatal sounds. So in English, usually ya is a palatal sound. Palatal sound is the region just behind post-alveolar region or post-alveolum. Ya as in yes. This is voiced, means that when we are producing aid, so we perceive more vibration, and then that is palatal in terms of place of articulation. So the tongue is touching our hard palate, and then that is approximant. Approximant means that the tongue is not absolutely touching the hard palate, but they are approximating each other. They are very close to each other, but still there is sufficient, for example, passage between the two, right? So the air is coming out without any obstruction. So, and moreover, there we have got two other palatalized allophonic variations of ka and ga. Yes, sometimes. So in English, this is a phoneme, right? But also we have some allophones that they are palatalized. For example, this is ka. If ka occurs between front vowel, like kitchen, so what happens? Ka comes to the front part of our, for example, hard palate. So it actually shifts from its exact position in terms of place of articulation. Now ka changes into kia, which is palatalized, like kitchen, kitchen. And then also before vowel surfacing as ka, which is represented ka y. If ka is, for example, here, and we have ya as an exponent, then ka exponent ya means that ka is palatalized. Right, it means ka has shifted from its exact position towards our hard palate. And next one we have got ga, also as in gave. So again, because ga actually occurred before a front vowel, it has shifted from its exact position toward our hard palate. Again, this is actually palatalized. You know, palatal sounds are different from palatalized. Palatal sounds means that they are phonemes, but palatalized sound means that they are allophones of the same phoneme. So what are velar sounds? That is already clear. Specifically, the back part of our tongue is touching our soft palate. Means that the active articulator is the back part of our tongue, and the passive articulator is our soft palate. So in English, ka as in kot is a kind of voiceless velar plosive. Voiceless means less vibration is actually perceived. Velar, the back part of our tongue is touching our soft palate. Plosive, we block the air is coming out in a plosive way. Again, the second counterpart is, the second sound which is a counterpart of ka is ga. The only difference between the two is ga is voiced and ka is voiceless. And ung, we have already discussed, ung is also voiced velar nasal, right? So this is voiced, it means when we are producing ung, we perceive or we feel more vibration, and then this is velar, the back part of the tongue is involved, and then the air is coming out through our nostrils. Then the particular sound is produced as nasal. Then this is actually another type of basically velar sound. Maybe in some variety, specifically here, it is written Scottish variety, so people are maybe pronouncing that something like loch, loch. So this is voiceless velar fricative. But in English, nowadays that we are speaking, we do not have. So even the author says this is replaced by ka, right, by other speakers. So we are pronouncing this as loch. So maybe they are pronouncing it in a different way. That is not actually the standard form of English phoneme, right? Maybe in some variety it exists or it is present. And the labial velar approximant, which is wa, and the labial velar fricative, which is this one, which is voiceless, right? So this is also wa, but this is voiceless, are not included here as they were discussed above with the bilabials. They doubly articulated sounds strictly belong under both headings, so we already discussed them. So similarly, although the dark L realization is also velar, it does not appear in the list as in right. So this dark L and light L that we have is an allophonic variation of la. La can appear as dark or la can appear as, for example, light. Light and dark las both are categorized as la because they are allophonic variation. So they are also when we are saying la, la. And then we have got glottal sounds. What are glottal sounds? Particularly those sounds during the production of which the glottis is basically involved. Right. In English we have, so the first glottis or one of the glottal sounds that we have is ha, as in hello. This is voiceless glottal fricative. It means that when you're producing ha, less vibration is perceived, and this is glottal because the glottis is involved in the production of the sound ha. And then fricative is basically referring to the manner of articulation. So one intervocalic between two vowels, allophonic variation of ta, which surfaces as a, that is also kind of glottal stop, right? But still that is a glottal sound, voiceless glottal stop, as in batter, 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 batter. We do not pronounce batter, we pronounce it batter, 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 batter. So in that case, that can be categorized specifically in American English is a kind of glottal sound. So next, questions, place of articulations, right? Can you recall these things? What do we mean by place of articulations? Number of places of articulation in English. How many did we have? Then active versus passive articulators. These are the relevant questions that you have to recall from our today's session. In case you cannot recall them, just replay the video or get back to your chapter. So question, if any, you can write your questions down and keep them, and then later on you can share with me and then we can talk. Okay, thank you very much. Wish you all the best, guys. Bye bye. See you.